Welcome to Alasquatch, the show all about Bigfoot in the great state of Alaska. I'm your host, Beans Baxter. So lace up your boots, zip up your coat, and come with me on an adventure as we explore all things cryptid in the last frontier. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Alasquatch. So we are fully entrenched into the month of October here. And that can only mean one thing here at the Alasquatch podcast. We're going to start our celebration of Halloween. We're going to be tackling some spooky stuff, some weird stuff. We're going to branch out a little bit from the topic of Bigfoot and hairy hominids and go into some other things. And, you know, I was trying to come up with a clever name to call our little Halloween block of episodes here, and I couldn't really think anything clever. And the best I could come up with was Alascary, because it's Alaska and it's scary, so Alascary. Yeah, I know. Please don't hit stop. So anyway, this first episode here, the one I'm doing today, it was kind of inspired by a comment that got left on one of my videos. And it's kind of funny. It was actually a comment that was made by somebody that obviously didn't listen or watch the video. It was about last week's episode where I did a review of the show, The Alaska Triangle, which is about strange and unusual phenomenon in the state of Alaska. And I did a couple of reviews of the couple of episodes that I'd watched of the current season 2. And someone had made a comment on the video about how, well, they call it the Alaska Triangle because, you know, they say people go missing, but it encompasses the largest cities and they don't like count the people that they find. And it's not inaccurate, but that has nothing to do with the video. So I kind of feel like the person made the comment and didn't watch or listen to the podcast because it wasn't, I was talking about the show named after the Alaska Triangle, not the actual Alaska Triangle. So, before you read or comment on a video or an article, maybe you should read it first. I don't know. It's embarrassing for everyone. So please do better. So anyway, I also want to point out, you've got a limited amount of time to get over to Manscaped and use our special code, the code BEANS, BEANS, for 20% off and free shipping. So don't forget to head over there and hit them up. Get yourself something nice. Get your boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever something nice. They've got some nice products and help support the show. And I believe that promotion ends here sometime next week or maybe the week after. I'll have to look, but I'm sure they'll probably keep the code active after that. But I only get credit for it if you use it for a certain amount of time. So please, if you need some hygiene products, head over to Manscaped and do some shopping for yourself. And also, don't forget, we've got the Alasquatch podcast store over at the Alasquatchpodcast.com. We've got some cool stuff over there. You can get signed copies of my books and some other cool Alaska-themed things, as well as Alasquatch podcast shot glasses and stickers and magnets and all kinds of neat stuff. So head on over there if you want to pick up a couple of stickers or magnets. Maybe you can give some out to some special little trick-or-treaters that are going to be headed your way that are fond of Bigfoot or Alaska or both. And also, Christmas is coming up, so it would be a good time to get some Christmas shopping done. Get it done early because apparently the post office has decided to not only raise their prices, but they are taking longer to deliver things. I'm going off on a tangent that's unrelated to anything really, but I dropped off a couple of packages the other day that were priority mail, and usually priority mail is delivered within 3 days. And I tracked them today, and they're not being delivered. It's going to take about 7 days to deliver them. And I thought, man, that kind of sucks. So be aware of that, guys. PSA, if you want something to get where it's supposed to go, take that into account. They're moving a little slower than they used to. So anyway, back to the task at hand here, which is the Alasquatch podcast. So what we're going to talk about today is missing persons in Alaska. And anytime you get into talking about Alaska and cryptids or strange events, it seems like the subject of missing people always comes up. And it's always like one of the main things people want to throw down. Those of you that remember the movie, what was it, The Fifth Kind? Or was it The Fourth Kind? The Fourth Kind, with Mila Jovovich. It was supposed to be set in Nome in Alaska, and it was based on some real-life disappearances that occurred, I believe, back in the 70s. And the explanation in the movie was that people were being abducted by aliens. And I don't necessarily believe that was the case. I'm not saying that alien abduction does not happen. I'm just saying I don't think that was necessarily what was going on there. I think people tend to take mysterious disappearances, and because by their very nature they're mysterious disappearances. They like to add, they like to embellish on them, and they like to make them more than they are. And I think that people, especially people that don't live here, they don't quite grasp the vastness that is Alaska and just how easy it is to go missing. And I've been lost before, but I've never really been lost in Alaska. Like I think I might have even said somewhere, like, you're not lost until you're Alaska lost. And because in most places, now granted there are exceptions in the lower 48, but in most places, if you're lost, if you walk long enough, you're eventually going to run into a river, a road, or some kind of civilization. And that's not the case up here. There are places where you could be dropped off and walk for the rest of your life and never see another human being. And that it can be pretty intimidating. And there's a lot of people out there that, they come to Alaska and they're like, oh, I'm going to go out in the woods and go fishing or hunting, or I'm going to go do this or do that. And then they get out there and they're like, what the hell? There's no cell service. So, it can even, like, just for example, on our recent trip up the Dalton Highway to Prudhoe Bay, I could tell Stephen was a little taken aback by some of the accommodations. He was just like, what the hell is, the rooms were small. The buildings weren't very, they were basically like connexes, that were Frankenstein together to make buildings. And, I could kind of tell he was a little surprised by that. And I'm like, well, what do you expect? We're way up we're above the Arctic Circle. This, this place doesn't necessarily lend itself to quality construction, and it's expensive to get any kind of decent materials up here. So they're going to do what they can do, to cut costs and stuff that's going to make it through the harsh winters. So it was a little bit of a shock. And I see that in people, if you come to Alaska and you go to some of the cities like Anchorage or Kenai or Soldotna or even Homer, it's great and it's amazing. But I feel like you haven't really experienced like real Alaska until you've gone out to a village or in the bush somewhere where you can't just, call and order a pizza, or you can't, go out and go to eat in a restaurant. One of the first places I worked in law enforcement was St. Paul Island, and there was no restaurants, no food services, no movie theaters. There was a store, 2 stores, I guess if you count the liquor store, but there was a store and a post office and a clinic. And that was about it as far as commercial establishments go. Occasionally, you could go to the fish processing plant, the Trident factory, and I guess eat in their cafeteria, although I never did. But I heard the food was pretty good sometimes. But I digress. That's just kind of my opinion on the subject. Like, until you get out of civilization, you're never going to really truly experience Alaska, to where you have to be ready to fend for yourself, basically. Like if something happens and I can't get out of here, or I can't get services, am I going to be able to make it? And, some of the people that I think we're going to talk about today probably fall into that category, where they went out into the wilds and they were maybe a little out of their depth. And, I'm not doing this to make fun of them, or to make light of their situation, or to even, a lot of people, when they talk about missing people, they're like, oh, it's to create awareness. It's to create awareness. And I mean, I kind of understand that. I understand that a lot with like children that have been abducted, people that have been kidnapped or taken. But, when you're talking about somebody that's lost in the wilderness of Alaska, I mean, if you're in Alaska and you're walking through the woods and you come upon remains of someone, I mean, you really need to be aware that there's a missing person in the area. You're going to report that, hopefully, no matter what. So anyway, we're going to get into it. And I kind of wanted to talk about just the myth, maybe a little bit, the majesty and the myth of the missing people in Alaska. And if I'm not mistaken, on the opening credits of the Alaska Triangle show, they talk about how 16,000 people have gone missing in Alaska in the last, I don't know how many years they talk about, 10 years, something like that, 20 years. And I'm not quite sure how they get that number. If you go to the Department of Public Safety's missing persons website, I can't read you the URL. It's too long. Basically, if you just go to the Alaska Department of Public Safety, or just go to Google, type in Alaska missing people, it'll get you there. This is the main active missing persons bulletins. And I went through and I counted, and there's 140 people on this list. And then actually that's a lie. I didn't do it. Siri did it for me. I did some calculating, and that is the 140 people on this list is very far below 1% of the population of the state. So, I mean, it's just, not to get too political or topical about it, but you're probably more likely to die from COVID here than you are to go missing. And don't take that the wrong way. It's just, I think that it probably, given these stats that I'm telling you, that's probably the truth. And I'm not sure how they group these. Like, I don't know. As far as I know, they keep these on here, I think, for forever. There's some on here that are pretty old, some from the 70s, and possibly even before that. There is a famous one on here. They've actually, she's on here twice, but I only counted her once. They call her Eclutina Annie because she was found near Eclutina Falls. And they believe she was a victim of Robert Hansen. If any of you guys have read the book Butcher Baker or seen the movie, I think it's Frozen Ground. It's got Nicolas Cage and John Cusack in it. He was a serial killer that was operating up here. And they believe she was one of his victims. He liked to take women, I think prostitutes, out into the woods and hunt them. And they believe she might have been one of his victims, and they don't know who she is. She hasn't been identified. So there's like an artist composition rendering of what she might have looked like. And then there's one that they just did last year that actually is a little bit more, I guess they used better technology to get a rendering. So she's still unidentified. If you go and click on her picture, it'll take you and tell you a little bit about the case, and there's some items that were found with her that they've photographed and placed into the information. So maybe somebody might identify her. I think one of them's a necklace and maybe a bracelet or something. So you might be able to go on there, take a look at those, if you knew somebody that went missing in Alaska around that time. So anyway, I kind of wanted to do like some profiles here of some of these cases, and just going on to the DPS missing person website, there's actually, there's not a lot of information on some of these. Some of the newer cases, there's a little bit more information on, but some of them are basically just the person's name, the last time they were seen. Sometimes they tell you where they were last seen. Sometimes not even that. So there's not a lot of depth in some of these, especially some of the older ones. It's more kind of like just a flyer for them to put up and say, hey, be on the lookout for this person. We can't find them. Others have a little bit more information, a little bit more context. And I tried to avoid people that had obviously like gone missing from boating accidents or aircraft accidents, stuff like that. I kind of tried to keep it confined to people who had died, or I'm sorry, not died, went missing under kind of mysterious circumstances, almost like missing 411 type cases. And it wasn't super hard to find a few, but I was kind of surprised at how little information there was on some of these missing people. Like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of context given with some of them. And I kind of feel, maybe it's just the investigator in me, but I kind of feel like some of these cases might benefit from a little bit more context as far as where the people went missing, what were the circumstances, what were they doing. I didn't include anybody that had gone missing in a metropolitan area, like a city like Anchorage. If a person goes missing in a metropolitan area, in my opinion, it's more than likely it's foul play or something like that. So anyway, I kind of went through here and picked out a couple that I thought were kind of interesting and maybe had a little relevance to some stuff that we've talked about here before. And I'll get into that. And I don't know if I'm going to do every single one of these, but I will definitely hit the high notes here and talk about some of these. And we will just get into it. So let me start pulling some of these names up here, and I'll tell you about some of the people that have gone missing in Alaska and some of the circumstances around that. So this first one that I'm going to go over here, this gentleman's name is Dervish Adelie, and this is an interesting one because it says he's an endangered missing person, which in my mind, when it says they're endangered, it means either they have some kind of medical condition that, maybe they have diabetes or some kind of other medical condition that they need medication to keep in check, or they have some kind of mental issue or problem that makes them, maybe it's harder for them to self-rescue or take care of themselves than it would, say, a person that wasn't afflicted with the same thing. So this one's interesting because Mr. Adelie's wallet, checkbook, and various camping supplies were found at a campsite off the Taylor Highway in June of 2000. So the wallet had his driver's license, an Illinois identification card, and receipt that showed a small purchase of food in Tok, Alaska. And apparently that receipt was dated 1992. So keep in mind, this stuff was found in 2000. In October in 2006, a relative contacted Alaska State Trooper reporting that Dervish Adelie was still missing. So they found his belongings in 2000, and I guess he wasn't listed as a missing person until 2006. And I know that because the case number they reference here on the flyer has a 06 is how it begins, and that usually means that's the year the case file was open. And this one's interesting because they found his stuff at a campsite, and it's kind of like he just wandered off from his campsite or was taken out of his campsite and disappeared. And that's pretty strange. It doesn't. Again, there's not a lot of details as was there a vehicle at the campsite, even was there tire tracks at the campsite or anything like that. Might be a little bit helpful. I'm sure the troopers probably have that information. They just don't release all of that out to the public. Basically, they're just like, hey, just be aware this guy's missing and you need to keep an eye out for him. But that was kind of the first one I come across that I thought was kind of interesting, especially since they found his belongings at the campsite. And then like 6 years later, a relative calls and says, hey, we still haven't heard from him. This next one comes to us from the Nome area. This gentleman is Joseph Balderas. He was 36 years old when he went missing. It says he was reported missing in Nome in 2016 after failing to report for work. His vehicle was located at mile 44 of the Nome Council Highway where he was believed to be hiking. His clothing description is unknown. So, guy didn't show up for work. I guess they contacted the police or the troopers, and they haven't been able to find him. And, I hear about these and I just kind of wonder, like, well, what did they do? What steps did they take to look for him? Did they get a dog and try and track him from his vehicle, etc.? It's kind of interesting hearing about some of these cases. And, it doesn't say if he's a Alaska native or not. And by Alaska native, I don't necessarily mean a native. I mean, if he was born and raised here. But yeah, it's an interesting case because there's just literally, they find his car and that's it. They don't know. It says he was believed to be hiking, so they don't even know if he was hiking. So, if you guys are going out into the woods, people, tell somebody where you're going. Tell your neighbor, your boss, your kids, somebody. Let them know where you're going and when you expect to be back. It's not good to go out like that, even if it's just on a quick hike, just a couple of miles. You should tell somebody where you're going and how long you're going to be gone. Even, like, for example, when we were in Area A, I went on that little walk by myself, and I told one of the guys at the cabin there, I said, hey, I'm going for a walk. If I'm not back in 2 hours, come looking for me. And, I was literally just going up the hill. I didn't expect to be gone 2 hours, but I figured that it would take me a little time to get up the hill, so I gave myself a little extra time, but not much. And of course, I made it back in time, and everything was all right. But yeah, you got to tell people where you're going, or at least tell them, what about where you're going. Maybe you might not even know. Maybe you might like, oh, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to find a trail to hike. At least tell somebody, hey, I'm going to go in this general direction and find a trail. And that being said, I I was telling somebody one time about going out and going hiking and stuff like that, and they're like, well, isn't that dangerous? I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, I take as many precautions as I can. I tell somebody where I'm going. I take my inReach. But I've found, especially in some areas where there's a lot of heavy canopy cover, that inReach doesn't always work flawlessly. So I've had a couple of problems in some dense forested areas getting a signal. Luckily, I wasn't in any trouble. I just was trying to, send a message that I was okay. But there's been a couple of times where I've pulled that inReach out and been like, man, I don't think this message this like 3 or 4 word text message is going to go through. So it always helps to have a backup plan and a backup plan. This next one is a gentleman by the name of Bradford Broach. He was 46 years old. Says he was last seen in August of 2016 at the Alasquatch Resort Hotel in Girdwood. He's headed out for a creek on the Winter Creek Trailhead near the base of the tram between 7:30 and 9 p.m. His belongings and rental car were located in the hotel parking lot. His family in Texas has expressed concern since he missed his flight out of Alaska. These are the ones like this that really bum me out, because these are the people that come here to Alaska. They're going to experience Alaska. They're going to have a good time. They're here on vacation and then they never leave. And that's pretty depressing to me. This guy, he was just here to enjoy himself. He was at the Alasquatch Resort Hotel. It's a good hotel. Pretty fancy place. Great ski resort from what I understand, but I don't ski. And the Winter Creek Trail, I'm not familiar with that. There is another trail in this area that we're going to talk about here a little bit later. But it's a big red flag that his rental car and all that stuff was found in the parking lot. And again, I'm kind of curious as to what steps was taken to find him. Did they use a dog? Did they use a helicopter with a FLIR? Like what did they do? And how long did it take them to search? Because, I know working in law enforcement, I was privy to a lot of the radio traffic that Alaska State Troopers in my area would have. And there was more than a couple of times when I would hear them say, "Oh, hey, we got a message from a distress signal from somebody's inReach or something. They're stuck, on this mountain, or they're stuck in this place. One of them broke their leg or has a rolled ankle or something." And and this stuff never comes in the middle of the day. It always comes in toward the evening, because I think what it is people start to realize, oh shit, it's getting dark, or oh, it's getting late, we need help, and then they ask for help. And more than a couple of times, like I was saying, I've heard the troopers be like, "Well, tell them to hunker down, we'll get to them in the morning, it's too late to go out there now." So I just, sometimes I wonder about the timeline of some of these events. Like maybe if they hadn't have acted right away, maybe things might have turned out a little bit different. Obviously, this guy, who knows when he was called in missing, and what was done about it when they got the call. It's just it's interesting. It's kind of interesting how these things play out. And hindsight's always 20/20. I'm sure a lot of times, I've received missing person calls myself, and like 99% of the time, the person just shows up. They're like, "Oh no, I went to the store to get something and had a flat tire," or "I went and my cell phone wouldn't work," or "I was here and my cell phone died," or we decided to spend another night wherever we were, and that's just how it plays out. And I'm sure, like I said, that happens like 99% of the time with missing person cases that I personally was involved in. And that 1% of time when the person isn't found, that's when you're like, "Oh God, I wonder if we could have done something different." And it makes me wonder, did somebody get that call and they're like, "Oh, he'll be back. He's just taking a long time to do the trail or whatever. He'll show up soon," and then he never does. And it makes me wonder on the timeline of some of these missing person cases. And this next one I want to go over, it's a female. It's a Sharon Buce, Buis. She was 48 years old, and she is missing from the Juneau area. She was believed to be hiking on Mount Roberts. Her clothing description is unknown. Her vehicle was found at a parking lot at the Mount Roberts trailhead on Basin Road. And I did a little bit more digging into this one, because this one, it seemed like it was a little bit more, I don't know, it was kind of mysterious. So I thought, well, maybe I can find some more information. That was, like I said, literally what I just read to you, other than the contact information for the law enforcement agencies. That's literally all the context on the missing person flyer that's on the DPS website. So I did a little bit more digging into it, and I read some of the news articles that were attached to it, and I found out that they don't really know how long she was missing. Apparently, she had a date, and I don't mean like a romantic date. She had plans. She had plans with a hiking partner to go hike at another place, and she didn't show up. And then when she didn't show up, her hiking partner got worried, went looking for her, found her car at this Mount Roberts trailhead or parking lot, and called in and said, "Hey, I think she's missing." I do know they did do a pretty extensive search of the area, didn't find her. And then a few days or weeks later, there was a gentleman, I believe, that was, he was a miner, I think, that had some experience. There's some abandoned mine shafts and stuff in the area. And he was up there doing his own search for her. He reported that he had found some bear activity and then come up on a foul stench. And I guess he backed out of the area, went and told the troopers, and they went in, loaded for bear, I guess. trying to find where this odor was coming from, and they couldn't find it again. So interesting case there. She may have succumbed to a bear attack. Maybe she got hurt and just was in a place where they couldn't find her. Interesting. But one thing I wanted to touch on this one, because she was, avid hiker. She was out hiking. Her friend, her hiking partner, said, well, she has a inReach or some kind of satellite, device, and they found it at her house. So she didn't take it with her that day. She probably just thought, hey, I'll just go out and do a quick, couple mile hike, and yeah, didn't take her device with her. So, be vigilant, people. Maybe at least if you don't have your device with you, let somebody know where you're going. And also, in this vein, I am a member of a Facebook group. It's a Alaska hiking group on Facebook. And I am very surprised at the amount of, how do I put this lightly? I don't understand how this hiking group isn't like a freaking, it's like a chum bucket for serial killers, because I'm always seeing during the summer and hiking season, I'm always seeing women like, hey, who wants to go hike this place with me? Or who wants to go hike that place with me? And even so, let's say you're a predator and you want to take advantage of one of these women. Okay, maybe you might say, hey, I'll go with you. And she might be like, no, I want another female to go with me, or I want, I'm looking for somebody else to go with me. Maybe she gets that vibe that you're creepy. But you still know that she's planning on hiking that trail tomorrow or Saturday or whatever day she was looking. So it just seems like a really bad idea to me. It just seems like it would be a place that it could be used for the dark side of the force. I'm just saying that. And there's been a couple of times where I've almost commented like, hey, quit telling people what your plans are and quit freaking hiking with complete strangers, because you never know which one of them is going to be, the next freaking guy on Criminal Minds or something. It just, it really, maybe it's just a cop in me. I don't know. It really bugs me. So, all right, guys, it's time to pay some bills. So I'm going to take a little break, and we're going to hear from our sponsors. And then when I come back, I'm going to hit you with a really interesting missing person case that it has a little bit of a strange twist in it. So let's hear a little bit of that Manscaped ad, and then we'll get right back to it. Support for the Alasquatch podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you, Alasquatch listeners. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code BEANS, BEANS, at manscaped.com. So guys, I'm one of the first people to try the new 4.0, blown away by the performance. The craftsmanship and the details of the 4.0 are next level. They've engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th-generation trimmer features cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. I now feel confident shaving my boys. This upgraded trimmer includes a multifunction on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through additional guard links with sizes 1 through 4. And did I mention the wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. Guys, if you've been shaving with the same nut trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong. Nobody wants to end up with pubes in their mouth. It's time to get your own ball, hair, and body trimmer with Manscaped and make me time the best time and enhance your confidence with some nice smooth boys. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BEANS, BEANS, at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you out there. I hope you're just getting off your computer from ordering your Manscaped stuff. So this next one, I promise you, there was something a little weird about it. A little bit of a twist to it. And this gentleman, his name is Nathan Campbell. He's 41 years old, and I'm just going to read you the information here on the missing person bulletin. Nathan Campbell was last known to be in the Denali National Park and Preserve, northwest of the park in the vicinity of Carey Lake, on June 13th, 2020. He was supposed to arrange for an early return flight or be picked up on September 15th, 2020, but he hasn't been heard from. His clothing description and direction of travel are both unknown. And then it goes on to say, anyone with information, please contact Denali National Park and Preserve or Alaska State Troopers. And this one was interesting because he went missing near in the park. And I just literally read you everything that's on the missing person bulletin. So I thought, I'm going to do a little bit more information. I'm going to dig in. I'm getting tongue-tied. I take a break and see what happens. I'm going to dig up a little bit more information on this. So I kind of Google the name and missing in Alaska, and I get this article. And this is an interesting article. It was published in October 2020. It's on the website Craig Medred News. I guess this is like a blog or something. It's titled "Deadly Attraction?" So I'm going to read you some snippets of this article. It says, a small single-engine float plane delivered 40-year-old Nathan Campbell deep into some of the wildest country in the heart of Alaska in May. He confessed to the pilot on the way that he was on a quest to find the lost pyramid of Alaska. No one has seen Campbell since. When National Park Service officials were finally notified he was missing in mid-September, they launched a search in a remote Northwest County corner of Denali National Park and Preserve. They found supplies Campbell had cached at Carey Lake, where the float plane dropped him, and some miles away, a collapsed tent. In the tent was a tattered diary that appeared to have been chewed on by rodents. The diary provided little in the way of clues as to what had happened to the man who called Wasilla home. It generally recorded the average day-to-day chores of life in camp. The last entry in the journal recorded that Campbell left his tent to get water. And then they have the missing person bulletin here. And sadly and unfortunately for Campbell's friends and family, Joe Stodd, who is, let's see, I kind of skipped over that part. He's the chief ranger for Denali. He said the adventurer died somewhere out there in the Alaska vastness, and his body is now buried beneath snow blanketing and the dense tangles of alder thickets that make for hiking hell in and near Carey Lake. So this gentleman was out looking for the pyramid that's said to be up there near Denali. And if you remember in my review of the season 2 of Alaska Triangle, I believe it's the first episode is about it. And, you know, I was a little disappointed in the episode because they literally just like flew around the area and was like, oh, we don't see it. And they didn't get on the ground and look for it at all. And one of the things that surprises me about this is how, like, he wasn't listed missing. He went there in June. He wasn't listed as missing until October. And it says that he had, I guess, a inReach device that he was talking to his spouse or family member with. And you would think that after they hadn't heard from him for a while, they would have somebody go check on him. And I guess at one point, I'm not going to get into the whole article here, but I guess at one point maybe somebody did ask for him to go be checked on, and the guy told somebody to do it, and I guess they didn't do it, and he didn't follow up on it. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but yeah. So this gentleman went missing looking for the Alaska Pyramid, and they don't have any idea what happened to him. They found remnants of his camp, but not him. And, one thing they don't mention, they talk about his little diary or his little journal he was keeping. They don't mention what the date of the last entry was, which I think is interesting. So, it sounds like he had been there long enough to set up camp some miles away from the lake and make several entries into the diary. And, I'd be curious to see what was in his diary. I imagine he probably ran afoul of a bear or something, but you just never know. It's so weird that there's just so little information put out about some of these cases. It gets pretty frustrating. So that's interesting. But the next one I'm going to talk about, this one hits a little close to home for me. This is a gentleman by the name of Michael Crawford. He was reported missing on April 23rd, 2020. And this one, he was camping near Ski-Lac Lake, which is an area that I frequent quite a bit. And I guess he texted somebody on the 22nd, and they located his backpack, fishing rod, and dog at the edge of Ski-Lac Lake down Hidden Creek Trail, where the Kenai River flows in the Ski-Lac Lake. And I actually, somewhere in my videos on the Alasquatch YouTube page, I have a video of me hiking on Hidden Lake Trail. So anyway, he went missing, and this is the day that you guys have heard me talk about before. I ended up knocking a hole in my radiator. This is actually where I was trying to get to that day. I was trying to get out there. And so the day he went missing was the day that I was trying to head out there, and I ended up hitting a really huge, it was during a breakup, and I hit a really huge pothole that was really mucky and muddy, and I ended up hitting my radiator, and anyway, I ended up wrecking my truck pretty much. So, that was the day that he went missing, and I kind of wonder, like, well, man, what would have happened if I'd have been around that day? But we'll never know. And that's interesting. I kind of think he was fishing on the ice and probably fell in the lake. But like I said, I think in my video where I'm hiking that trail, there's actually looks like some bear tracks in the snow there. So it's every time I've walked on that trail, I've either seen a bear or heard a bear. So it's a pretty bear rich environment there. So you never know. And contrary to popular belief, when winter comes, it's not like somebody throws a switch and the bears get turned off. They do get up and move around a little bit in the wintertime. So I know they did search for him quite a bit, and they never found any indications that there was a bear attack. So who knows? All right, so this next one is probably the most recent on the missing persons list here. And I've kind of been following this a little bit in the news. This gentleman's name is Gary Fisk, and this bulletin was issued on the 1st of October of this year. So just like 6 days ago from the recording of this. So I think he's been missing, he's been missing since September 21st. So I'm going to go ahead and read you the information here on the missing person bulletin. Gary Fisk has been missing since September 21st, 2021, when he left to start hiking on Crow Pass Trail in Girdwood. He was planning to arrive at the Eagle River Nature Center 2 days later, but never arrived. Several searches of the area have been unsuccessful in locating him. Gary was wearing a red synthetic material shirt, OD greenish beige hiking pants, and ankle high hikers. He took the blue jacket in the above photo, a rain shell that may possibly be red, black rain pants, which may or may not have on, and a sleeping bag, and a small, unknown color backpack. So one of the interesting things about this is the Crow Pass Trail. It's a trail that I've always wanted to do, but it's one of those where it's like 20 miles long, 21 miles long, something like that. And there's a huge change in elevation. It goes from like almost 0 to like 3,000 feet. It's supposed to be just spectacular as far as the views. There's supposed to be a lot of great scenery. I think there's some waterfalls and some rock fields and just all kinds of environment. And I've always wanted to do the trail, but it's one of those where you got to have somebody like ready to pick you up on the other side. And it's just, never worked out. I thought maybe I might try and do it next year. But I kind of like somebody to go with me. So any of you guys that are not serial killers that want to go hike it with me. But anyway, I just actually this morning saw a post in one of the hiking groups that I'm in where somebody they were on Crow Pass Trail last night, I guess, and the conditions up there are getting really bad up high on the mountain. And I guess they barely made it out. Like they had a hard time keeping their eye on the trail because of all the snow, and they got in a bad situation. Luckily, they were able to get themselves out. But I guess it's the season. The trail is closed for the season, or if it's not closed, it should be for the season. And another interesting thing about this missing persons case. So I don't know, maybe some of you guys caught it, but this trail, I guess, it starts in Girdwood and it goes to the Eagle River Nature Center. So if you guys remember, if you're a regular listener to the Alasquatch podcast, you'll remember a couple of episodes ago, in the episode where the former Army Ranger gives his sighting account, he talks about having an encounter here in Alaska, and his sighting occurred at the Eagle River Nature Center on a trail there. So that's interesting. I'm not saying that Bigfoot makes people go missing or anything like that, but I'm just saying that, you've got, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Fisk isn't the only person that's gone missing on that trail. And it connects to that area. So, hey, it's just put that in your toolbox and do what you will with it, but just keep that in mind. And, he went by himself, which is probably not a good idea. He's an older gentleman. He was 74, which, is not idea for somebody that old probably to be out, and it depends on the person. There's probably some 80-year-olds that are in better shape than I am, and it could kick my ass at hiking any day, and I don't doubt it. But yeah, there's a few of those cases, like the missing 411 cases that I hear about, and they're talking about like, yeah, this guy was like, 82 years old and he went hunting and they never found him. Like, he was 82 years old. Why was he out in the woods by himself? Like that's not mysterious. That's just negligent. I don't know. It's just, what are you going to do? That's my opinion. So anyway, let's see. Who else have we got here? Let me take another look into my notes. All right. This next one, this gentleman's name is Donald Hussein, Hussen. And I'm just going to read you what's on the missing person bulletin. Donald Hussein was last seen on August 2nd, 2019, around 2200 hours at his residence near mile 134 of the Elliott Highway in Manly Hot Springs. Donald's direction of travel and destination are unknown. A game camera in the area captured photos of Donald shortly before he was reported missing. On August 3rd, 2019, that's when the pictures were taken. Based on the game camera photos, Donald was wearing a dark baseball cap, camouflage outer jacket with a dark hooded jacket underneath the dark pants. Search and rescue efforts in Manly Hot Springs are ongoing. And that was issued August 8th, 2019. And the reason I bring this one up is just because if you're a regular listener to the show and you pay attention, there was a gentleman on, Ryan, a few episodes. Actually, there's been 2 Ryans on, so I think it would be the first Ryan that had a roadside crossing encounter not far from Manly Hot Springs. So again, I'm not saying that Bigfoot makes people disappear is responsible, but again, it's interesting. I mean, you gotta wonder what's going on there. So anyway, I think we're going to do one more here. I've got so many to choose from here. And I like I said, I only went through and picked ones that were kind of on the mysterious side. I didn't go through and pick any that were in boats that overturned or anything like that. And interestingly enough, on the top of the active missing person bulletins page, it says If a person went missing due to a tragic incident, such as a boat sinking, plane crashing, or perhaps avalanche, a bulletin likely would not be generated. Yet there are several in here that are exactly that. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know why they put that disclaimer in there, but yet they obviously don't abide by it, because there was multiple ones in there that I saw that were on boats that had overturned, or were fishing, and they would find like a jacket or something floating in the water. So anyway, let me take a look here and get our next one going. So this next one, it's probably, out of all of them that I've just read you, this one is probably the most head scratching of all. This is the one that just makes you go, what the hell? Like, where in the hell did this guy go? This is a gentleman named Michael Paul Lemaitre, Lemaitre. I'm probably butchering that name. Lemaire, maybe. And he went missing in July 2012. And I'm going to read you the missing person bulletin here, and then I'll give you some more information. All right. So Michael Lemaire, I'm going to say Lemaire. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. Michael Lemaire was last seen on July 4th, 2012, in the Mount Marathon race in Seward. He was wearing black shorts and a black shirt. And that's literally everything that's on the missing person bulletin. So what's interesting about this one is, oh, my dogs they just got back and they're drinking water. All right. I was trying to record this before they got home, but I did not get done in time. So you may hear them snoring and making noise in the background. So anyway, to get back on it, Seward, the Mount Marathon race. Mount Marathon, it's a mountain in Seward, and it's kind of like, you can see it in the, I mean, it's in the city. It's not like a couple of miles outside of town or whatever. Like, it's right there. And there's not too many places you can go in town and not be able to see it. And it's about a 3-mile race. It goes up the mountain. It goes, in 3 miles, you gain like 3,000 feet in elevation. And it's pretty hardcore. I think the record for it, like the fastest time, is like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. And literally, when you start out, you're running uphill. I've seen pictures of people doing it. They're like crawling on their hands and knees. And then on your way down, you're literally like almost falling down the mountain. There's places where you got to like sit down or skid down on your knees. It's pretty hardcore. Like, it's not for the faint of heart or those that are not in very good shape. But apparently, Mr. Michael here, I'm going to call him Michael because I can't pronounce his last name for crap. Michael here was a runner. He was in good shape. He wasn't exactly, a marathon runner, but he was 65. And apparently you have to put in, I didn't know this until I started reading into this, but you have to put in, I guess so many people want to do it that they do a lottery for it. And you kind of put your name in the hat, and then if they draw your name, you get to participate. So they have it every 4th of July, and they have the race, and they have like a men's division and a women's division. And I think they kind of stagger the times, and they let the men and women go at different times. And anyway, 2012 was an interesting year for the Mount Marathon race. And I'm going to read this article, parts of this article here. It comes from outsideonline.com. And this article, I don't see Katie Enders is the name of the author here. On July 4th, 2012, runners gathered in Seward, Alaska for a 3-mile trail race up the mountain that looms 3,000 feet over Resurrection Bay. By the end of the day, 2 were in the hospital with serious injuries and 1 had vanished. What happened? So it says, while injuries aren't uncommon on Mount Marathon, 3 unusually serious accidents marred this year's event. Iraq War veteran and Black Hawk pilot Penny Assman, that's her name, Assman, Assman, slid over a cliff, lacerating her liver and breaking several ribs. An Alaskan runner named Matthew Kinney fell at the same spot and suffered broken legs and brain damage. The most puzzling casualty, however, was 66-year-old Anchorage resident Michael Lemaire, who vanished without a trace on his way up the mountain. It's believed to be the first fatality in the race's history. The incident has left Seward struggling to understand how a runner could disappear on a course that's only a few miles long. We spoke... So, anyway, from what I gather, like I said, it's only 3 miles, but it's like 3 miles straight up. And from what I understand, Mr. Michael was in last place. He was bringing up the rear. And one of the race volunteers, I guess they set up little stations along the way where people can like get a drink of water, or if they're hurt, they can get medical attention or whatever. And from what I understand, the gentleman that was at the top of the mountain, or I assume it was a gentleman, it might have been a woman. The one guy that was setting up at the little runner station at the top of the mountain, it was 6 p.m. Everybody had already basically come and turned around, all the runners. So he packed up his stuff and was heading down the mountain, and he ran into Mr. Michael. And Mr. Michael said, "Hey, is it okay if I go ahead and finish the race?" And the guy said, yeah, go ahead. And he continued on his way. The volunteer continued on his way down the hill, and Mr. Michael kept running toward the summit, and they never saw him again. So there's a lot of speculation as to what happened to him. And I'm not reading an article anymore, by the way. I'm talking because I just realized it kind of sounds like I'm running or reading. So it kind of sounds like they think maybe he might have kept running, like he didn't quite know where to turn around, and he just kept going and ended up like running off a cliff or something. I guess it was kind of foggy that day. I guess the weather wasn't that great. And obviously, I mean, and interesting tidbit. I was working that day that this happened, and I remember when he went missing. I remember hearing the call go out over the radio, the police radio, and I mean, they had people looking right away. It wasn't like, they waited a couple hours or they waited a few days. Like basically when he didn't show up, when he should have showed up, people started looking for him. And, they're going up the trail, they're calling his name, they're looking for him. They've got flashlights, even though I don't think it really gets dark in July, but they're, shining lights down in the canyons and into dark areas and ravines and stuff. And they're just looking and looking, and they don't find a trace of him. And it was just so bizarre. And I guess probably the most popular theory is that he missed the turnaround point and he just kept going. And this is the most head scratching case out of the ones that I think I've presented to you today. And he's still missing to this day. And I know people have gone up there looking for him since then, and they haven't found a trace of him. No clothing, nothing. So that's interesting. I mean, I don't know what to think about it. I guess he could have succumbed to a bear attack or something. More than likely, I think he probably fell into a ravine or something, and eventually probably got scavenged on until there was nothing for anybody to find. And that's pretty gruesome. But I mean, I can't really account for any other reason why they couldn't find him. And they talked to his daughter in one of these articles, and I guess his daughter, she came up here from wherever she lived in the lower 48 and did quite a bit of searching for him herself. People would go up with her, and it sounds like the last time she went looking for him, she went by herself and couldn't find anything. So it's a pretty heartbreaking story, and it's just a damn mysterious disappearance. It's pretty head scratching as to what could happen to him. And I think there was 300 or 400 runners. So you've got, there's hundreds of people in the area, hundreds of people, running up and down the mountain. You've got all the volunteers, and yeah, just to disappear around all that activity and all that hubbub. It just boggles the mind. And from what I understand, I've never been up Mount Marathon. I've never been to the top. But I think the trail continues to go past where the turnaround point is. And it gets into some pretty rough country, although I've never seen it myself. But that's kind of what I gleaned from reading some of the articles on it. So anyway, that is the strange case of Michael Paul Lemaire, a 65-year-old gentleman that disappeared while running in a marathon up a mountain. And I think that's probably one of the most mysterious disappearances in Alaska that I can think of. And, you know, I remember when he went missing and hearing the radio traffic that day, and just, you know, I think they might have even got a helicopter to look for him, but that might not have been until the next day. But I think they did have a helicopter with FLIR capabilities looking. So, yeah. So there you have it, guys. That's my episode on missing people in Alaska. I'd like to do another one. If you enjoyed this one, there's certainly some more material out there for me to do another show on it. But yeah, I thought that it would be a pretty interesting topic, and I was kind of inspired by the talk of the Alaska Triangle, not the TV show, but the actual Alaska Triangle. And, you know, I think that it is hyped up a little bit. It is, you know, exacerbated quite a bit. But, I mean, people do go missing in Alaska mysteriously, and I can't offer an explanation for a lot of it. I think most of it is probably because of just the vastness of the area, and there's just so much ground to cover. There's a quote in one of the articles that I kind of wanted to close the show with, and this is an article. It's on alaskapublic.org, and it's an article called "How Did This Anchorage Runner Go Missing on a Popular Mountain Race" by Casey Grove of Alaska Public Media. And it's actually a fairly recent article. It was just published July 9th, 2021. And there's a quote here from somebody named, I'm going to butcher this name, Buce, Theriault, Buce. But I'm going to read you this quote here. "I think it's the same intrigue that makes people go missing in Alaska so fascinating for some people, because it's just the vastness of wilderness. Michael Lemaire could have taken just a few wrong turns, and then very quickly was in the thousands and thousands of impenetrable mountains, wilderness in the Kenai Mountains. I think the vastness and the proximity of that vastness to town and to thousands of people and spectators, that you could be gone without a trace while there are hundreds of runners and thousands of spectators like a mile less than a mile away from you. It's just a reminder for Alaskans that the very thin line we have to live between our little patches of town and the kind of infinite wilderness and the dangers of that. I think that fascinates people. I know it's fascinating to me, the overwhelming scale and power of the wilderness, and how close we live to it, and how close we all tried that line." I think it means tread that line. But yeah, I thought that was a fitting quote to end the show with. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you would like to hear more. I would certainly like to make some more for you. And if you like what you hear, I appreciate you. Thanks for listening so long. And be sure, if you want to support us, head over to manscaped.com, order yourself something nice. And when you check out, use the code BEANS, BEANS. You'll get 20% off your order and free shipping. And if you guys also want to support us, you can buy some Alasquatch swag at the Alasquatchpodcast.com website. And I really thank you for those of you that support us and enjoy what we do. And, you know, I'm always trying to do better and make better stuff and put out better content. I'm working on it. It's some people are born for this kind of stuff. I don't think I was, but I also think that if I have a little patience and I try really hard, I think I can put out some pretty cool stuff. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I appreciate you. Happy Halloween. And we'll be back with you here pretty soon with some more Alaska stories.